The painting was finished. At least, everyone else thought so. Warm afternoon light filled the small studio. Brushes rested quietly on the table. Fresh paint was beginning to dry. Daniel stepped back, studying every corner of the canvas. His friend smiled. "It's beautiful." Daniel didn't smile back. His eyes stopped at one tiny brushstroke, barely visible from where he stood. Without saying a word, he dipped the brush into fresh paint, covered the corner, stepped back again. Still, it didn't feel right. He painted over it again and again. Hours passed. The painting became heavier, not because of the paint, because of the expectations he had quietly placed on himself. Late that evening, his friend returned. "You're still working?" Daniel nodded. "I just need to fix one more thing." His friend looked at the painting. It looked finished this afternoon. Daniel remained silent, because he wasn't trying to make it better anymore. He was trying to make it perfect, for as long as he could remember. Good enough never sounded good enough. A school assignment with one mistake felt like failure. A compliment only made him notice what he could have done better. Even success never stayed long. His mind immediately searched for the next flaw. The strange part was, no one around him expected perfection. Only Daniel did. So where did that voice come from? Why do some people feel guilty for resting until every task is flawless? Why does one small mistake feel louder than 100 things done well? The answer has very little to do with perfection itself, and everything to do with how we learned to measure our worth. Sometimes, perfection isn't a goal. It's a shield, a quiet attempt to protect ourselves from disappointment or rejection or criticism. But every shield comes with a price, and Daniel was about to discover how expensive perfection could become. The next morning, Daniel stood in front of the same painting. Nothing had changed. The colors were still beautiful. The composition still felt balanced. Yet somehow, it still wasn't enough. He picked up a brush, then slowly put it back down. For the first time, he asked himself, "What exactly am I trying to fix?" The room became quiet. He searched the canvas again. The more he looked, the harder it became to find anything truly wrong. It was as if his eyes were no longer searching for mistakes. His mind was. Perfectionism has a strange way of moving the finish line. The closer you get, the farther it seems to move away. You tell yourself, "I'll finally feel satisfied when this is perfect." But when that moment arrives, your standards quietly change again. Soon, what once felt impossible becomes ordinary, and ordinary never feels enough. This is how overthinking slowly steals joy, not by telling you that you failed, but by convincing you that you could always do just a little more. Many people believe perfectionism comes from having high standards. Sometimes it does, but more often, it comes from fear. The fear of disappointing others, the fear of looking foolish, the fear that one mistake will erase everything you've done right. This is where human behavior quietly shapes our decisions. Our brains naturally remember criticism more vividly than praise. One negative comment can stay with us for years, while 10 compliments fade within days. So we begin believing that if we can eliminate every mistake, we can finally feel safe. But safety, built on perfection, never lasts, because perfection has no finish line. Daniel looked around his studio. Old paintings leaned against the wall. Some were unfinished. Some had obvious flaws. Yet they were the ones people loved the most. Not because they were perfect, but because they felt honest. For the first time, Daniel wondered, what if people never expected perfection? Only honesty? The question lingered, long after the paint had dried. And perhaps that question was the beginning of real emotional intelligence. Not seeing yourself through impossible standards, but seeing yourself with honesty and compassion. A week later, Daniel received an invitation. A local gallery wanted to display his work. He stood in front of the same painting, brush in hand. The old voice returned. One more adjustment. It could still be better. He walked closer, studied every detail, the colors, the shadows, the texture. Then, he quietly placed the brush back on the table. For the first time, he chose not to change anything. Not because the painting was perfect, but because it had already said what he wanted it to say. There would always be another tiny flaw, another small correction, another reason to wait one more day. If he kept chasing perfection, the painting would never leave the studio, and neither would he. Many dreams don't disappear because people fail. They disappear because people keep waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect version of themselves. But perfection isn't a destination. It's a moving target. The closer you get, the further it seems to move away. Real emotional intelligence is knowing the difference between improving your work and punishing yourself. Growth asks, what can I learn? Perfection asks, why aren't you enough yet? One question helps you move forward. The other keeps you standing still. That afternoon, Daniel carefully wrapped the painting. As he carried it toward the gallery, he noticed something unexpected. His hands were still a little nervous. He still wondered whether people would like it. But this time, their opinions were no longer the reason. He created it. When the exhibition opened, visitors slowly filled the room. Some stopped for several minutes. Some walked past without saying a word. One little girl stood in front of the painting. For a long time, she looked up at her father and smiled. I like this one. Daniel smiled too. Not because everyone loved his work, but because he finally understood. They didn't have to. Your value has never depended on creating something flawless. Sometimes, the most beautiful things carry small imperfections, because those imperfections remind us that something was created by a human being, not by perfection, not by fear, but by courage. Thank you for spending these moments with Psychology Canvas. If today's story resonated with you, subscribe for more journeys into human behavior, emotional intelligence, and overthinking, because every mind has a story, and every story deserves understanding.